I want to, in closing, segue from this talk to tomorrow's talk, bi'idhnillahi tabarak wa ta'ala, by mentioning the greatest reason for the miraculousness of the Quran. And this will open up a beautiful discussion about why the Quran has so much of an effect upon the person who truly listens and comprehends and grasps what has been revealed for the guidance of mankind of the Quran. Any discussion and conversation about the miraculousness of the Quran, it must begin with the fact that the Quran kalamullahi ghayru makhluq minhu bada'a wa ilayhi ya'ud. That the Quran is the eternal uncreated speech of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. It originated with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and will be safeguarded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this matter of belief is a consensus of Ahlul Sunnah, of the people of Sunnah, that the Quran is the perfect uncreated speech of Allah. It is from the uncreated speech of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. The speech of Allah is an attribute of Allah. And just like Allah in all of His names and His attributes is unlike any of His creation, then likewise the speech of Allah is unlike the speech of any of the creation. This is a matter of consensus, as was explained by the great Imam Muhammad ibn al-Husayn al-Ajuri, rahmatullahi alayhi, who died in the year 360 after the hijrah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He says in his book Ash-Shari'ah, "I'lamu rahimanallahu wa iyyakum." Know with certainty, may Allah have mercy on us and you, أن قول المسلمين الذين لم يزغ قلوبهم عن الحق ووفقوا للرشاد قديما وحديثا أن القرآن كلام الله تبارك وتعالى ليس بمخلوق. Know that the saying and the doctrine of the Muslims, whose hearts did not deviate from the truth and who were guided to correctness both in the past and at present, is that the Quran is the speech of Allah, it is not created. لأن القرآن من علم الله. أن القرآن كلام الله تعالى ليس بمخلوق لأن القرآن من علم الله وعلم الله تعالى لا يكون مخلوقا. The Quran is the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the speech of Allah tabarak wa ta'ala is not created. The Quran, he says, is from the knowledge of Allah, and the knowledge of Allah is not created. The Quran is from the knowledge of Allah tabarak wa ta'ala, and the knowledge of Allah is uncreated. It is an eternal attribute of Allah. Ta'ala Allahu an dhalika, dalla ala dhalika al-Qur'an wa sunnah. Allah is exalted and absolved from that. And this is proven by the Quran and the Sunnah. Wa qawlu sahabati radiyallahu anhum wa qawlu a'immat al-muslimin la yunkiru hadha illa jahmiyyun khabith wal jahmiyyu 'inda al-ulama kafir. He says, may Allah have mercy upon him, this is proven by the Quran and by the Sunnah and by the statements of the Sahaba, may Allah be pleased with them, and the statements of the Imams of the Muslims. No one denies this except for a Jahmi, except for one who was upon the way of Jahm ibn Safwan, from the negators of the attributes of Allah. Khabith, a person who was filthy and vile. Wal Jahmi 'inda al-ulama kafir, and the person who was a Jahmi in the estimation of the ulama has disbelieved. And this was mentioned by the great scholar Abu Ja'far al-Tahawi rahimahullah ta'ala, who died in the year 321 in his Aqidah al-Tahawiyah. He said, فَمَنْ سَمِعَهُ فَزَعَمَ أَنَّهُ كَلَامُ الْبَشَرِ فَقَدْ كَفَرَ. Whoever hears the Quran and then claims that the Quran is the speech of humans, فَقَدْ كَفَرَ, then he has disbelieved. وَقَدْ ذَمَّهُ اللَّهُ وَعَابَهُ وَأَوْعَدَهُ بِسَقَرٍ. Allah has condemned him and rebuked him, and has promised him the punishment of saqar, of blazing hellfire. As he said, tabaraka wa ta'ala, حيث قال الله تعالى, inasmuch as that Allah, the Most High, exalted be He said, سَأُصْلِيهِ سَقَرٍ. He said that I will place that person in saqar. And this is verse number 26 of Surah Al-Mudaththir. Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, فَلَمَّا أَوْعَدَ اللَّهُ بِسَقَرٍ لِمَنْ قَالَ. Since Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala threatened blazing fire for the person who said, Inna hadha إن هذا إلا قول البشر. إن هذا إلا قول البشر. That this is nothing but the statement of the speech of humans. Since Allah said that, and since Allah said that that person will be placed in the fire who claimed that the Quran is a speech of any human being, علمنا وأيقنا أنه قول خالق البشر. At-Tahawi said, since Allah threatened that person with punishment, that we know with certainty that it is the speech of Khaliq al-Bashar, of the creator of humans. وَلَا يُشْبِهُ قَوْلَ الْبَشَرِ, and it does not resemble and is not comparable to the speech of humans. His Excellency, Fadilatul Shaykh Salih ibn Abdul Aziz al-Shaykh, Hafidhahullah wa ra'ahu, he commented in his explanation of At-Tahawiyah upon the above statement. He commented on the above statement of At-Tahawi, rahimahullah ta'ala, that we just heard, saying, وَجْهُ الْإِعْجَازِ فِي كَلَامِ اللَّهِ جَلَّ وَعَلَى هُوَ أَنَّ كَلَامَ اللَّهِ سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى لَا يُشْبِهُ كَلَامَ الْبَشَرِ. That the reason why the Quran is miraculous is that it is the speech of Allah, Tabarak wa Ta'ala, and the speech of Allah is not comparable to and is not like the speech of humans. وَلَا يُمَاثِلُ كَلَامَ الْبَشَرِ, and it is not akin to their speech. وَأَنَّ الْبَشَرِ لَا يُمْكِنُ أَن يَقُولُ شَيْئًا يُمَاثِلُ صِفَةُ اللَّهِ جَلَّ وَعَلَى, and that human beings cannot say anything that resembles something that is from an attribute of Allah, which is the speech of Allah, the Quran, Tabarak wa Ta'ala, being the speech of Allah. وَالنَّاسُ لَا يَسْتَطِيعُونَ الْاخْتِلَافِ طَبَقَاتِهِمْ وَتَنَوُّعِ مَشَارِبِهِمْ أَن يَتَلَقَّوْا أَعْظَمَ مِنْ هَذَا الْكَلَامِ. He says, and people with all their different levels and social classes and their various diverse persuasions are unable to receive anything greater than this speech. They are unable to bear or receive anything or find anything that is greater than this speech, the Quran. وَإِلَّا فَكَلَامُ اللَّهِ جَلَّ وَعَلَى فِي عَظَمَتِهِ لَوْ تَحَمَّلَ الْبَشَرُ أَعْظَمَ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ لَكَانَتِ الْحُجَّةُ أَعْظَمَ لَكِنَّهُمْ لَا يَتَحَمَّلُونَ أَكْثَرَ مِنْ هَذَا الْقُرْآنِ. He says, otherwise, if people could bear more than the greatness of Allah's speech as it is found in the Quran, then it would be an even greater proof. If people could bear greater than what is in the Quran from the speech of Allah, Tabarak wa Ta'ala, because the speech of Allah is not restricted to what is in the Quran, and if they could bear more than that, then it would be an even greater proof upon them. لَكِنَّهُمْ لَا يَتَحَمَّلُونَ أَكْثَرَ مِنْ هَذَا الْقُرْآنِ. However, human beings cannot bear more than what is contained in this Quran. ولهذا تجد تفاسير من أول الزمان إلى الآن وكل واحد يخرج من عجائب القرآن ما يخرج. That is why you find that the books of tafsir explaining the Quran have been written from the earliest times until now, and each one extracts things from amazing benefits of the Quran that it brings forth. والقرآن كنوزه لا تنفد ولا يفتر على كثرة الرد لا من جهة التلاوة ولا من جهة التفسير. He says, and the Quran, the treasures of the Quran are inexhaustible, and one never becomes tired of it, no matter how much it is recited and no matter how much it is explained. No matter how much is it recited, no matter how much is it explained, a person never gets tired of the Quran. They never get enough of the Quran, and if their heart is in the right place, and if they realize the greatness of what they are reciting. إذا تبين لك ذلك فكلام الطحاوي هذا من أنفس ما سمعت وأصح الأقوال في مسألة إعجاز القرآن. He says, once that is clear to you, then this above quoted statement of At-Tahawi, rahimahullah ta'ala, is from the most precious and important things that I have ever heard, and the most correct statements as relates to the issue of why the Quran is miraculous. وَهُوَ أَنَ الْكَلَامِ لَا يُشْبِهُ الْكَلَامِ, and it's because the speech of Allah is unlike any other speech. إِذَا تَبَيَّنَ هَذَا فَنَقُولُ كَلَامَ اللَّهِ جَلَّ وَعَلَى فِي كَوْنِهِ لَا يُشْبِهُ كَلَامَ الْبَشَرِ لَهُ خَصَائِص. And when that is clear to you, then we say that why Allah's speech is unlike any other speech is because it has special characteristics. And these special characteristics are what the scholars have written about when they wrote entire books about the miraculousness of the Quran and explain the Quran in great detail and the treasures that are found in the Quran. This is where we conclude this evening. Sa'ilin Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala at-tawfiq wa sadad wa hidayah ila sabil rashad. Tomorrow, inshallah ta'ala, we are going to mention some of the statements of the early scholars from the Sahaba, وَمَنْ بَعْدَهُمْ, and those who came after them, as relates to loving the Quran and respecting the Quran being an evidence that a person loves and respects Allah tabarak wa ta'ala, because the Quran is the speech of Allah, and loving the speech of Allah is a proof that one loves Allah and respects Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for al-afu wal-afiyah wal-mu'afat fi dunya wal-akhirah. Allahumma innaka afuwun tuhibbul afwa fa'afu anna. O Allah, you are the one who pardons, you love to pardon, so pardon us. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبته وسلم تسليما كثيرا.